So, the power sector, quite a lot has been said about it. So we've got lots of challenges and we've got various solutions being proffered on how best to address it. We've talked about the consumers, we've talked about the regulators. Now, Afrinvest West Africa is trying to set an agenda for the stakeholders and is putting together a training of some sort for the stakeholders. And has this come at a good time? Let's hope that Obianuju and Nsofor will be able to answer this for us. So good morning to you. Obianuju, it's great to have you on the program.
Thank you very much. Well, you're right. We are putting together a training series. This is actually the second training series. We actually had one last year. It was titled Investment Strategy in a Volatile Market, which was largely successful as our AEF portfolio outperformed the benchmark index. I mean, it was appreciated 16.9% in 2016, while the benchmark index was down 6.2% in 2016. So this year, we are focusing on the power sector. And you ask, why the power sector? I mean, looking at Nigeria, the power sector plays a very key role in the development of Nigeria. But you look at it like in a year, we produce 5,000 megawatts per annum, when the actual demand is about 30,000 megawatts. Then you look at the likes of South Africa, currently they produce about 40,000 megawatts. I mean, is our case different? So we are organizing this training in order to, it's going to have like an overview of the power sector. We are looking at the different components of the value chain, that is your fuel codes, your gen codes, your trans codes, your discos, as well as the end users, me and you. We are going to be talking about gas supply, gas infrastructure, also focusing on financial analysis, as well as the ratios for these gen codes and discos. I mean, how do they recognize their revenue? What is the market share? What is competition like in this industry? Then just to round it up, we're going to be focusing on valuation for investors that are looking for mergers and acquisitions in these sectors, or those investors that are looking for an equity stake. And you're going to be focusing on all the different methods of valuation, your residual income, your net asset valuation, free cash flow, and the likes of it.
All right, very good way for us to tee off this conversation. But let's take it now from the angle of what you think investors, international investors, will be looking for if, for instance, that's also your target, to try to get them to come in to fund this particular sector. Because taking a look at yesterday's the Eurobond issue now, for instance, the international investment community showed a lot of confidence, seeing that it was oversubscribed 8 times. So that means they believe in Nigeria's economic reform agenda. And the power sector, for all intents and purposes, is still under a reform agenda, of course. And so we're talking about the state of the distribution companies, the generating companies, and the transmission company. Yes. At this time, do you think that with this confidence on the long term, that in the short term to medium term, we might have international investors or maybe a strong domestic, private sector, interest in this sector, sector of the economy again?
Okay. First of all, I'd like to state that the current liquidity challenges we've had in the FX market is still there. So any investor bringing in their funds would like to know how they are going to repatriate these funds. So I believe what investors saw was a very attractive dollar-dominated asset. I mean, the coupon rate is about 8% or so. You cannot, given the global economy, I mean, you are in a global economy of low interest rates or even negative interest rates. So this is what investors saw, and that was why the Eurobond was oversubscribed. So what we should be looking at is this proceeds are factored into capital expenditure, so that in the medium to long term we can see the trickle-down effect. Not just, the federal government shouldn't just focus this on the recurrent expenditure.
But you see, a lot of investors are looking to see how quickly, they can come in, trying to put manure, if you like, in the ground to see how fertile it will be. And even though it's supposed to be long term, 2032, that's another 15 years. Yeah. But we want to see how this can quickly be, tied into short to medium term prospects for that sector of the economy, because like you rightly mentioned, capital expenditure is very critical because you're talking about power, you're talking about works, you're talking about housing, you're talking about transport. And in the budget for 2017, it sized
500 and something billion.
564.21. So that definitely is not enough to get the power sector into shape. And of course, give the much needed funds to transmission, to the distribution and the generating companies, which at this time is a challenge for them.
Well, it's going to be a tough one, seeing investors, foreign investors coming. I mean, there's still the liquidity crisis. So what we are going to see is more of domestic participation, not necessarily from the foreign side. Yeah.
Okay, so let's bring it a little bit back to these players in the power sector. Do you think, although there's been a lot of conversation around it, do you think they have a proper understanding of what the power sector value chain really is all about?
Well, I wouldn't say no. That's exactly why we're having the training series, is to educate investors on the rudiments of the power sector. So let's just look at the broad view of the value chain. We have the fuel cores. That's where the source of power. We have solar, we have gas, and we have coal. Although coal is quite harmful to the environment because of the green effect, Nigeria uses gas as a source of power, which is currently very expensive for the GenCos. So from the fuel cores, you have the GenCos who generate this power and then takes it to the TransCos. So this is then further taken towards the DisCos, and the DisCos, they have the problem of collection losses. I mean, like a few years back, they introduced the prepaid meters, which was a fantastic idea. I mean, but you still see that this is not evenly distributed across the nation. There are still a significant number of people that do not have these prepaid meters. I mean, you see at the end of the month, the NEPA officials are coming in with a bill which is not backed by data. So these users, the end users, are not able to pay. I mean, you're bringing a bill that isn't backed by data. So this all aggregates to collection loss, which the DisCos cannot pay the GenCos, and the GenCos already have the problem of expensive gas power.
Obianuju, you talked about liquidity crunch in the power sector,
yeah.
And I was hoping, I'm sure like most Nigerians, taking a look at the fact that the investment community's confidence is still high with regards to Nigeria going forward. And talking about funding now, for instance, we know that the 192.9 billion naira power sector stabilization fund launched by the CBN has seen a disbursal of about 120 billion, but it's still yet to ease the solvency and liquidity crisis in the sector, which is why I was hoping that, with this confidence reposed, in Nigeria by international communities, that this would be a little different.
Okay, let me take you back to 2013, where the CBN sold about 6 GenCos and about 11 DisCos to investors. I mean, these power assets were dominated in Naira, but however, the federal government sold this in dollar-dominated. It was sold this power assets in dollars. So you see that investors had to go over to the banks and source for funds in foreign currency. I mean,
which is why we should have foreign investors coming in anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So you see, so there's this mismatch there. I mean, so every time that the Naira depreciates, these GenCos and DisCos, they are at a loss. So that is already a problem on its own, coupled with gas pipeline vandalism. I mean, since I think 1999, a lot of money has been pumped into this sector, but you see that there's been a lot of, should I call it a conundrum, or it's just a vicious cycle or something. There's gas pipeline vandalism. There's also the huge debt. I mean, the federal government actually has a huge stake in this company. So, I mean, are we looking at a bailout for these GenCos and DisCos, which is it's a source of concern.
It's interesting that you mentioned a bailout. I've had this conversation a couple of times with Bosin, and we always end up having a very huge, constructive argument. Do they need a bailout? Do they need to merge? Do they need to be reacquired? But if you reacquire them, then it begins to give other investors mixed signals that you can't privatize and hold your word. So, do they need a bailout?
Well, that is a question that is yet to be answered. Currently, I think some of these GenCos and DisCos are doing some restructuring of their loans. So that's also a key note we are going to be discussing in our training series, the restructuring of these foreign currency dominated loans for the GenCos and the DisCos.
So what else are we expecting to talk about, aside from the power sector value chain, we've talked also about gas, probably power distribution?
Well, power distribution would stem from the discos. I mean, there's collection losses. I mean, they say this, they hammer on this almost every time. There is collection loss. They are not getting the power that is being distributed. They are not getting revenue for that. So they cannot meet up with payments for the GenCos. So that's exactly, should I say, from the end user, is a problem.
All right, so quite a lot for us to look forward to, and that's coming up, of course, next week. Obianuju Nsofor, investment analyst with Afrinvest. Thank you so much for your perspectives on the program today. Business Morning continues in just a moment. Join us again.